I'm in the middle of my master's program in sports psychology, and in just a fluke snowboarding accident, I end up injuring that same knee. Different injury, but same knee. I was like, okay, everything you are learning about in terms of helping athletes perform optimally in their sport, you're going to apply to this injury, and your recovery is now your sport, and you're going to put everything into this injury and sort of apply it in a way like this is your performance. Your performance now is coming back from this. There's a picture you have in your mind of how the path is going to go, right? At least for the next few months. Sometimes it's a year, depending on what those goals are. So when something like rattles that so significantly, it becomes very important to take the time to actually formally redefine your goals. When you have something in your life that you are passionate about and that is exciting and that is fulfilling and that you love, and it's not until you're injured that you realize, oh my gosh, I don't have any other stress management skills. Like, this was it. And there's some research on like some of the skills that we work on in mental skills training and in sports psychology, especially the skills around developing hardiness, that when people are higher in hardiness, they're less likely to get injured. Every musician out there and every athlete out there is going to say some aspect of performance is mental and some aspect is physical. Even if we're saying 60-40 and we're saying both aspects have an impact on performance, and you're saying
and recovery and all that stuff,
exactly, yeah, but you're only training the physical and you're saying 40% is mental and you're doing 0% training in the mental, that's a problem.
Hey, welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're taking a little bit of a left turn from where we usually go with the podcast, where we usually interview musicians and musicians who have gone through injury, music educators and the like. Today we're talking to somebody who I met about a year ago. We were talking about this before we started recording, when I was discussing options with people of what I should be doing with my life in this field. So this person has been very instrumental in that journey for me in more ways than she probably realizes. I'm very grateful that she has taken the time to talk to us today. She's also one half of the authors of a book that I've talked about multiple times on this show. It's called Rebound, if you're new to the podcast. It's specifically for athletes who are going through injury, the mental side of their recovery. But I will tell you, and this is one of the reasons why we're talking today, is that as a former athlete and as a musician, there's really more commonalities than there are differences between the two populations. Yeah. So I'm going to stop talking and introduce you to Carrie Jackson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. I'm excited that you're here. The thing that I really wanted to I don't usually start out this way, but in this case, I wanted to ask you, you're what's called a certified mental performance consultant. Mm-hmm. And that obviously works with performers of any kind, but in most cases, athletes, on the mental side of their performance, of the mental skills that they need to be successful. But correct me if I'm wrong, the majority, or if a big part of what you do, as evidenced by the book, is working with injured athletes. And so I'm curious, why have you focused on that particular part of the population?
Yeah. It's funny because really early on, I recognized how important it is to have that type of support during injury, like early on in my career. But I didn't end up specializing it until much later in my career. So the catalyst really came from the first part was from my own experience. So I had a knee injury. So before I even knew sports psychology existed, before I knew it was a field of study, I was very active, like I was an athlete, and I ended up injuring my left knee and had a torn meniscus and had to get surgery and fix it up. And I really struggled coming back from that injury. Like, I struggled with pain management. I struggled with trusting my knee, and I had a hard time coming back. And fast forward a few years, I'm in the middle of my master's program in sports psychology, and in just a fluke snowboarding accident, I end up injuring that same knee. Different injury, but same knee. I tore my MCL, and literally as they were bringing me down the mountain in the sled, I was like, okay, everything you are learning about in terms of helping athletes perform optimally in their sport, you're going to apply to this injury, and your recovery is now your sport, and you're going to put everything into this injury and sort of apply it in a way like this is your performance. Your performance now is coming back from this. And it was so profoundly different, my experience from the first injury to the second, that it was like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to have access to this. So that was kind of the very first thing. And then as I continued in my career and had been working with athletes, I ended up working with quite a few injured athletes because of the sports I was specializing in. I specialized early on in my career in cycling. And if you work with cyclists, you're going to end up working with injured athletes because people crash on their bike. So I applied everything to them, and it was like, okay. People who had, a very challenging season often came back to have their best season ever after that. And so I was like, all right, maybe it's time to specialize.
Something there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick. Sorry to interrupt the episode, but if you are a musician who's going through an injury right now and you feel like you could use some extra help or some extra coping strategies to help you get through this really sucky, difficult experience, head to musicianunchained.com/let's hang to see if a coaching relationship would be right for you at this time in your recovery. Okay, enjoy the rest of the episode. That's awesome. And it was funny when I was introduced to your book by actually a man who endorses it on the back cover, Justin Sua. He was telling me that he told me that you had a podcast as well.
Yeah.
And so I looked it up. This is at the very beginning of when I started Trust the Process. And it was very interesting to see that we not only have like similar themes that we talk about from a psychological standpoint, but also it's just kind of like the same format of like interview and skills,
right.
Stuff. So that was fun. And I forgot to mention that at the beginning, but it's called the Injured Athletes Club. If any of you haven't heard of it yet, I know I've mentioned it a few times on the show, but definitely go check it out. The other thing, because the other part of this puzzle for me is how, like you said, injury recovery becomes your performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so the skills that you develop maybe to combat performance anxiety, so to speak, the same tenets of that particular type of development really play a role in injury recovery and management. The one thing I wanted to ask you is when it comes to performers, and I'm just going to use performers today, and athlete, musician, right?
They're all performing. Exactly.
All performing. What's the most important, one of the most important skills to develop as part of your injury recovery process? Maybe like inner voice, self-talk type of things.
Yeah. There's a few that immediately come to mind, right? Because of one of them that like immediately came to me when you asked that question, that I think sometimes gets overlooked is to like when you get injured, before that moment, right? The moment that you got injured, before that moment, you had some goals set out for yourself, right? Things that you were working towards, in your athletic life or in your musical life. Like there's things that and there's a picture you have in your mind of how the path is going to go, right? At least for, the next few months. Sometimes it's a year, depending on what those goals are.
Yeah.
So when something like rattles that so significantly, it becomes very important to take the time to actually formally redefine your goals. Because what happens is when you don't do that, there's part of your brain that is still gauging your feelings of success and fulfillment based on the original goal that was set before you got injured.
Your execution of those goals.
Yes, exactly. So you really kind of have to pull back and go, okay, so now in this moment, what's my goal? And your long-term goals become shorter, right? So like maybe you had a long-term goal, that's like 4 months or 6 months or a year. Now your long-term goals might be like, what do I want to do in the next week for my recovery or the next month, right?
Sure.
Because there's stuff that's still sort of up in the air. So that's one that gets overlooked a lot, I think, and which is really, really important because you want to make sure you are gauging your feelings of success based on where you are right now in this moment and not based on what you were able to do before you were injured. So that becomes important for confidence. But the inner voice is another big one. And the role that plays in the injury recovery process and how we can kind of develop these negative feedback loops and in just certain ways that the brain works and the brain is wired to protect the body. There's certain things that once you kind of know and understand how the brain operates and that it has a negativity bias, that you can go, oh, okay, so that means these are some of the things I need to do for my recovery in order to help, right? Because so often we have support and help and resources for the physical recovery and not necessarily for the mental recovery. But any injured musician will tell you that mental piece is just as big as the physical piece in coming back.
Yeah, and it's something that I feel like it's kind of slaps you in the face when you get injured. It's like you think, okay, I got to recover. Let me go to the doctor. Let me go to a physio. Let me go to a physical therapist. But then you don't think initially until it kind of out of necessity, you realize, oh, there's this whole other component to my recovery that really needs some attention.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think and again, the crossover of the two populations, the two domains, there's that sense of identity that you were kind of alluding to, right?
Yeah.
Where our performance is and our goals are attached to some element of our identity. And that can be stronger, that can be a weaker, association, I guess.
Yeah.
In preparation for this conversation today, I was listening to your podcast with Cindy Kuzma, and you guys had an episode this past season about where you talk about identity and how to navigate those challenges when your identity, well, I should say when your identity is challenged.
Yeah,
right.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
And it's just interesting you mentioned being able to adapt your goals, because I feel like those two things are very interconnected. Because if I'm not able to achieve my goals in my performance, whether it's musician or an athlete, then that can really cause, speaking from experience, an identity crisis, right?
Absolutely.
Of some kind. So what's important to realize for a performer who's going through an injury?
Yeah.
Of how to healthily navigate your recovery and the loss, and how that challenges your identity as a performer.
I think, I don't know if I've told you this, Clark, but I think your audience might like to know too. So I'm going to move my camera really quick. Can you see? I have also been an injured musician. I didn't have it in the shot because I've got Christmas stuff. Like it's messy back there, right? But so I also know what it's like to be an injured musician as well as an injured athlete. And
you haven't told me that.
I
Wow.
did. I know. I just realized. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I think I should. You guys might want to know that. Like,
please do tell. Yeah. Guitar
player, singer, songwriter, and it's an important part of my life, being a musician as well as being an athlete. And so, I think that one of the most important things to recognize with this, like the way that it does challenge your identity, is that is part of the picture, for especially if you have either like a high athletic identity or a high musician identity. So what that means is like when a significant part of your identity is wrapped up in one aspect of what you do, it becomes not just what you do, but who you are. So it's a part, it's a part of you, right? So when that gets threatened or that gets challenged, it can feel very devastating and it can feel very unmooring and feel like, well, who am I if I can't play guitar? Who am I if I can't do my sports? So, just recognizing that it does shake things up. And so if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, why am I having such a big reaction to this? Like, why am I so upset? There's a reason you're upset, right? And sometimes just recognizing, oh, I'm grieving not being able to be connected to that part of my identity right now is important to, like, once the people that I work with kind of recognize that, it's like, oh, that's what's happening. Like, I'm not crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm really missing it, because there's a lot of these little losses that come with that, right? Like,
right.
It could be your stress outlet. It could be your social outlet. Like, it serves a lot of different purposes oftentimes, like whether, musician and athletic life, like for different people, it serves a lot of different purposes. So I think sometimes we don't realize like each one of those is a little loss that, so if it shakes things up. And so I think the important thing to recognize is, and this is what I tell my athletes too, is like, you're still a musician. This just happens to be where you're at in your journey right now. And now the universe is calling on you to heal from this And that is your job right now. And by doing that, you're still connected. Like that is what you're doing in service of your
that side of your identity.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's
beautiful.
hard when you're like, but I want to do the thing. But so I think that's an important thing to recognize is like, just because you cease to be able to do that in this moment does not mean that that is no longer part of you. It is still part of you. It just looks a little bit different right now.
Hey, sorry to interrupt the episode yet again, but I wanted to tell you that if you are also a music educator of any kind and you feel like this is a conversation that needs to be had for your program, please reach out to me at clark@musicianunchained.com and we can talk about how we can collaborate together to bring these topics, to bring these strategies to your program to help your students stay as healthy and as happy as they can while pursuing their passion. Keep on keeping on and continue watching the episode. Yeah, man, that's so good because one of the things that I've experienced in my own recovery and I've seen with others is kind of that out of self-preservation, that kind of dissociation with the sense of identity just so you can function, right? It's like, I can't do this right now, so I'm going to, and this is what I tell people on my show and when I talk to them is explore other elements of your identity. Right. Other elements of what makes you, right? Which is a beautiful part of injury recovery. I think it is actually essential, but also I think it's just like with anything else. It's too much one or the other.
Right.
So one of the things I've wondered since getting into this field is how can performers maintain their quote unquote competitive edge? With musicians, it could be their sense of artistry and self-expression.
That's right.
Really that inner expressiveness or need to express yourself, while still kind of keeping a healthy association with their craft and their identity. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. It's, that can be another part of the recovery process is to look at like, okay, well, because it's really easy to focus on all the things you can't do when you're injured. And so looking at like, okay, well, what is available to me that I still can do that keeps me connected to that part, like to do both, right? To both, like, what are the ways I can still stay connected to that part of me? And what does this give me the opportunity to do that maybe I wouldn't do when I was spending all of my time over here in this part of my identity? And so, kind of thinking about like, oh, is this a time where I can really get into listening to music and exploring different types of music? Are there other ways that I can connect to my musicianship and my skills and my craft, and looking at what I can do versus just all of the things that I can't do.
Focusing on what you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because on the flip side of the recovery, one of the things that I've found myself gravitating more towards in my studies and in this podcast is really how, these mental skills and this kind of psychological side of performing can be an injury prevention tool,
yes,
as well as recovery. And one of the things that I've noticed is that, especially in the athletic side of things, and I guess the perennial example of this would be Kobe Bryant, right? Is that work ethic, that drive to be the best that you can be, or even be the best there is. The reason why I mentioned that is in this context of identity is because I feel like they're connected in the sense that if you are like really connected to your craft as far as identity goes, like high musician identity, high athletic identity, I guess it preemptively, is it more important to mitigate identity issues that may happen if injury does occur or when it does occur, or just kind of triage it when it does and just like let that competitive edge stay there. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Both work, right? Like if you haven't done the proactive work, the reactive work still helps, right? Like in response
something's better than nothing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But it's funny because like I think the thought process early on was like, and even coaches would kind of buy into this idea of like, I don't want you looking at any other, so this would come up mostly with kind of professional athletes thinking about retirement and what are they going to do after their sport.
Sure.
And for a long time, there was no support around that in terms of like the teams and the organization where like, we're not helping you with retirement. We don't want you thinking about that. We want you here right now on the field.
Focused on the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they started to realize, oh, there's something here where they started to provide that for players and recognized, oh, players are actually playing better, right? Because now they're not freaking out about what am I going to do late? I know, right? Yeah. So there is something to like, let's build these skills proactively, right? And instead of just looking at them reactively. So, but it's a natural sort of human thing to do, right? Like we're busy, we're pulled in so many directions. Like I'm not going to address something until it becomes a problem. So we're often reactive.
You're spinning plates.
Yeah, exactly. But there is some merit, and there's some research on like some of the skills that we work on in mental skills training and in sports psychology, especially the skills around developing hardiness, which is the personality construct of resilience. That when people are higher in hardiness, they're less likely to get injured. So one of the things the other thing we know in research is like people who are experiencing higher levels of stress are more likely to get injured. So if you're working on your skill set of resilience and building up your hardiness and working on mental skills that help you manage stress, and you get better at that skill, that's going to serve you well in many different areas, but including injury prevention, right? There's certain injuries they're out of your control. You're not going to prevent.
Right, exactly.
But in terms of like overuse injuries or the like different injuries that might happen where, so we still don't understand exactly what the mechanism is. But one of the thoughts is that when you elicit your stress response, one of the things you lose is there's all these different effects of eliciting your stress response that work really well if you are running or fighting for your life, and don't work so well if it's just like a psychological threat, or I'm feeling really nervous before my performance. So doing things that help with that process to lower that is important, because some of those symptoms end up potentially contributing to injuries. What the thought process, like one of the things, as an example, one of the things you lose is your peripheral vision. So like, for an athlete, like, does that mean you're not able to make a quick move when someone's coming at you side, you don't see them coming, that kind of
like
thing.
A very tactical,
yes,
aspect of it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this question has just been on my mind for forever, just because, like I was saying, just you don't want to have performers get so holistic. I guess the fear is like they'll get so holistically realized, so to speak, in their other aspects of their life, that they kind of lose the edge they have in their performing, right? And as an injury prevention,
yes,
like I'm not going to invest. I guess the better term would be over-identification, right?
Yeah.
Avoiding over-identification, right?
Yeah.
In their sport or in their craft. But the anecdotal or the, observed evidence that I've seen is that it does actually facilitate better performance.
Yeah.
It's just coming from a different place. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's just challenging. Like, when you have something in your life that you are passionate about and that is exciting and that is fulfilling and that you love, oftentimes is like naturally all of our energy goes into that. And it's not until you're injured that you realize, oh my gosh, I don't have any other stress management skills. Like this was it. And now I have no idea what to do. So I'll get clients that experience that. So recognizing there is benefit to working on some of this ahead of time, right? And that there's ways that it can really be beneficial when you're in a wonderful place, but we just don't often think about it at those moments.
Right, yeah. It's the, I talked about this once, it was the, what's the Ben Franklin quote? That an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
That's right, yeah.
So, and that's where I've just kind of seen, especially in the musician world, because, and this is what I want to talk about next, is in the musician world, the tendency to conceal your pain before it becomes like a full-blown diagnosable injury is super common. I mean, most of the time, that's what's going on, and that's, I've read it in the literature with athletics. I would say it's probably the same in any performance domain, where if you have something that's inhibiting your performance socially, you don't want to divulge that because it's just going to might cause problems. but that's kind of where these two things in my mind intersect, is like if it's so much a part of you, and especially as like in the context of an ensemble, a performing ensemble or a team, you're not going to want to say, hey, I'm going through something that's going to inhibit me from being able to do what I love to do. Right.
Yeah.
Did you have something you wanted to?
Just, it's interesting to think about it now, where there's a lot of crossover between like, I don't want to let my team down. I don't want to let my band down. I don't want someone to take my spot in the ensemble. I don't want someone to take my spot on the team. That there's just, there's a lot of different aspects.
Even to scholarships when it comes to music education or athletics, it's like same. It literally is just a change of word.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you know, maybe some cultural things, but not as much as we may think. What's important? Like, talk to the musical directors or the professors, or anybody who's teaching these musicians. What is important to implement as an educator or someone in that leadership role to help facilitate, hey, if somebody's going through this, that they can come forward. Right.
Yeah. I think that's a really great question. I think normalizing it, like, oftentimes when you're a musician or an athlete, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you are going to be dealing with an injury. I mean, really just being human. Like, at some point, we all go through something like that. So, or most of us go through an injury.
Well, AI hasn't replaced us yet. So AI robots haven't replaced us yet. So,
I think it's important to normalize it. And I think one of the things that was really a big goal of mine with creating all these resources for injured athletes is just to help people start to change the narrative around it. Like, this sucks, but it does not have to be the worst thing that's ever happened. And so what are the gains we could potentially get from this experience? And so making it kind of because very much oftentimes people feel sidelined, right, when they're injured. And it's like, okay, well, we'll see you when you're ready and when you can come back and start, being a part of everything
contributing
again. Exactly. So to create ways to not isolate, because they're already going to isolate when they're injured, right? And so, and they will have a hard time divulging. And what's interesting, it's not only that they're going to have a hard time divulging these things to you, and then they might not do it and may end up having a longer recovery because they waited longer to address the issue. But sometimes it's even more that they don't know how to divulge it to themselves, that we sort of fight against it, and we don't, because we don't want it to be happening. We don't want it to be true. And so so oftentimes in the beginning when something happens, you start to feel something instead of being encouraged to okay, let's address that and take care of it. You're like, whatever, I'm sure it's nothing. It'll work out. It's going to be fine, right? We do the denial and the bargaining to try and make sense of well, I've had stuff like this happen before. I'm sure it's nothing. I don't want to take a day off. I don't want to, so we fight against taking care of ourselves. Because as performers, we're very much we're often trained to tune out our body's signals, right? And override. And the game must go on, the show must go on. Doesn't matter that I'm in pain. Let's, so sometimes athletes and musicians won't do anything until there comes a point where, oh, now I can no longer. Now I have no option but to take care of this. And that potentially creates the longer sort of injury cycle, instead of practicing listening to your body all the time and taking and doing things that you need to really honor what the body needs over what the mind wants. And that's hard to do when you're a performer.
Yeah, especially, I mean, just in both cases of athletes and musicians, there's countless examples of somebody, of the performer who pushed through the pain and got a favorable outcome, let's say. I was even just watching this TV show a little while ago of a tennis player who, I don't know if you're familiar with the TV show Breakpoint.
Oh, yes,
yeah. Loved it. And there was this one case where I guess, okay, somebody is probably going to comment this, the actual name, but somebody was going up against Nadal.
Okay.
Rafa Nadal, right? And he injures himself in practice the day of, or maybe it was the day before. The athletic trainer checks him out and says, "Hey, you might need to sit this one out, man, because it was inconclusive, right?"
Okay.
Ended up gambling on his health, beat Nadal, and and just was
it
flying
was
high
probably
for a while.
Thank God I didn't pull myself out. Yeah. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Well, and to his credit, the gamble paid off. It turned out it was like just some weird anomaly. It wasn't a long-term injury.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there thinking to myself, like, okay, if I was, let's say I was the mental skills coach for this person or for the musician who's in a similar case, like, because the common thing for musicians is I've got an audition tomorrow. I've got a competition tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. It's not necessarily so much 1v1 type of stuff.
Yeah.
But still very high pressure situations. And just the only conclusion I've been able to come up to, and this is more just me and you just wanting to pick your brain about it, but I guess it's just up to the performer and whether or not they want to take that kind of a gamble.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. And I will say, like, primarily I'm working with adults. Like many of my clients are adult. I do have some high school, but like when you're working with an adult, you're consulting with an adult, and their way, like part of our job, right, is to create a space where they can weigh everything out without judgment. So they can really look at all of the pieces and make the decision where, and sometimes you might be helping them like think through some of the like,
the long term, the short term.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's an athlete or a musician, if there's something, they might make a different decision if it's like, this is the audition of a lifetime, or this is like a championship performance. I'm going to the World Cup. It's worth it to me to do this, and then I'm going to address the issue after. So sometimes people will make that decision.
Sure.
And then other times, so sometimes they might be weighing out the importance of the event with whether or not they make that decision, or they decide, you know what, it's not worth it. Let's address this. So they do, they're adults and they do get to decide, and our job is to like, help support that process, and in a way that, we want to make sure they're not doing harm to themselves. But
well, exactly. Yeah.
But that, that is a reality sometimes of performance is like being in those positions where you're having to make a very difficult decision. I think the piece that I see people struggle with sometimes are like, where it's like, okay, maybe if you want something to be different, it's time to do something different, right? Like, which is if they're in an injury cycle or they feel like they keep getting injured. And so then sometimes our conversations might be a little bit different, because oftentimes what happens is like the template you might use for your performance does not always apply when it comes to injury recovery. So sometimes if a performer has this template of like, I set a goal for myself and the harder I work, the more likely I am to get that goal, that template does not always apply over in the injured athlete space. So sometimes that might be part of the work that we're doing. If someone's in this, like, I have a chronic injury and or a repetitive injury, or I keep getting injured, like, okay, let's like our conversations might shift a little bit.
It's really interesting. I appreciate your response to that, just because again, it's just something that's been swimming around in my head for a while, and I think just it's important to recognize what are your, like you said, what are your goals, and where does this situational circumstance weigh in the balance of your long-term goals. Again, every situation is going to have different nuances, but that was just the first example that came to my head.
And that's
probably like an extreme example,
That's true. But that's so important, right? It's like that ability to be very honest with yourself of like, this decision I'm making right now in this moment, is it actually in service of my long-term goals and my most important goal? Because sometimes we just want the immediate reward, right? I want to go play with my band. Like, versus like, is that decision in this moment actually in service of your true goal? And that's hard. it's hard to be honest with ourselves sometimes about that of like, no, actually, if the big goal is like, I want to be able to play, as long as I can, for the rest of my life, and this potentially is going to set me back a year, like that's not in service of my true goal.
Right.
So what do I need to do with that information?
Okay, last interruption, I promise you. Before we get to the rest of the episode, I just wanted to let you know that if you're a musician going through an injury and you need a community to help you get through it, if you need a sense of support, some people you can ask questions to, just gain a pick-me-up whenever you need it, the Musician Unchained support group, formerly known as the Trust the Process Podcast Injured Musician Support Group on Facebook. The link is in the description below for you to join. You don't have to go through this alone. Keep on keeping on and enjoy the rest of the episode. Right. And there's other things to go into it. Like you want to make sure you're getting a correct diagnosis from a medical professional. You want to make sure you're getting all the information that you need of the consequences and stuff like that. But that's just something that I've always wanted to ask you. Yeah. We're kind of getting close to our time here, and it's just been so good. There's a part in your book that I wanted to ask you about because it just makes me laugh. And I think it's a good way to kind of tie up this conversation. I honestly can't remember what chapter it's from. I forgot to write it down, but that's a cue for people to go read or buy the book so that you can read
the whole thing, so you can find it.
Read the whole thing so you can find it. But this quote just kind of makes me laugh. He said, or you say, you might be tempted to blow this off as self-help or pop psychology blather. After all, concepts of optimism and positive self-talk have been generalized to mean that if you just think happy thoughts, which is often what people think performance psychology or mental skills training is, if you think happy thoughts, you will be happy all the time. And if you aren't happy, it's your own darn fault. This line of thinking makes Carrie want to turn into a monster herself, as it is just not true at all. Yes. So I want you to talk to the people in the performance domain who may think that this type of work is just kind of it's either gravy or it's just for people who really, really actually need like psychiatric help or something.
Yeah.
What would you say to those naysayers?
Yeah.
The haters, dare I say.
All the haters. Yeah. Oftentimes the way I describe it, I actually just was doing a webinar and another podcast and was talking about this idea that like sometimes what I'll do is I'll be with a group and say, okay, so if we had to put a number on it, because I'm going to guess every musician out there and every athlete out there is going to say some aspect of performance is mental and some aspect is physical.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
That both are part of it.
Yeah.
You'd be hard pressed to find someone that didn't say, oh, yeah, there's some of both. So I'll ask like, okay, so as a group, let's kind of figure this out. Like what percentage do we feel like is mental versus physical? And people will throw out all different kinds of numbers. The ones I get the most are like 90% mental, 10% physical. Or 50-50, right? So I was just working with a group of endurance coaches and I asked this question and like almost all of them said 90% mental, 10% physical. I said, okay. So, and then we were kind of talking about this idea and I said, well, even if we said it was 60-40, 60% physical, 40% mental, you guys are kind of saying 90-10. I said, okay, so let's play with these numbers. And I said, so now tell me, what percentage of time are you coaching your athletes or what percentage of time are those athletes training their mental fitness versus their physical fitness? And they were like, okay, I just said that performance is 90% mental, but I am giving them 100% physical training and 0% mental, right? Like,
I would have loved to have been in that room.
Right? Like, oh, okay, there's a mismatch here, right? So when we kind of think about it in that way of like, if we're saying both aspects, even if we're saying 60-40 and we're saying both aspects have an impact on performance and you're saying
and recovery and all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. But you're only training the physical and you're saying 40% is mental and you're doing 0% training in the mental, that's a problem, right? That's going to affect you. So it really is. It's both aspects. And so sometimes people just don't know, well, what is that? I don't know how do I do that? What does that look like? And that's where you and I come in, right? Like there are things that you can do to train your mental fitness, just like your physical fitness.
Right. And the thing when I talk to musicians, the obsession with like practicing your craft, the tactical, if you want to use that word, becomes kind of all encompassing, right? Yeah. But And what's interesting is that people will try to fix a psychological issue with tactical reinforcement.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. And then and personally, speaking from my personal experience, that is what caused my injury from a psychological standpoint. And so that's why I feel like the things that we're talking about today are just so important from a recovery and a prevention standpoint, so that people can understand that missing puzzle piece, so to speak, might be what we're talking about today, and may not be of course, we're not saying that if you sit there and visualize for 10 hours, you're not going to be, you'll be able to go and hit a home run in Fenway Park. It's like, you need to learn how to swing a bat.
That's right. Physical is part of it. Yeah.
But it can be that thing that makes the difference, and be a huge chunk out of your development as a performer, or prevention or recovery from an injury, if that's not part of your routine already. So, Carrie, thank you so much for your time today. One last question I want to ask you is, you have, let's say you have a musician that comes up to you that says, "Hey, I heard you on this podcast, and I'm going through an injury. I've got 1,001 different types of thoughts running through my head. Like, it just happened. Super nervous about what this means, and things like that." What's either a skill or just something you would tell them up front without necessarily knowing the specifics of the nature of their injury?
I think a couple of things come to mind. One is like you're still a musician, and now your job as a musician is to work on your recovery. And I think the other thing is the way that you're feeling right now is not how you will always feel. Is an important one too, because the kind of the whatever emotional sort of response you're feeling in that moment can have a tendency to sort of hijack our brain, and feels like the brain thinks, "Oh, this is it. Like, this is what it's going to be like forever." So just that gentle reminder that, like, okay, how I'm feeling right now is not how I will always feel. Like, what can I do, in order to feel better about my situation tomorrow, right? So not even looking super long term, but just and being patient with the process. Because the other thing I'll say is, like, your recovery never goes as quick as you want it to, because you don't want to be injured in the first place. So you really got to work.
It's already going to skew your thinking.
Yes, yeah. So kind of like laying that foundation of working on your patience and trying to stay in the moment, and that you'll get through this.
Yeah, you'll get through it. This has just been so much fun for me. I've been wanting to do this for a while, so thank you again. Where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, so you can head to my website is carriejackson.com, and I have all kinds of great resources over there. And then specifically for injury, you can head over to injuredathletesclub.com and get and there's all kinds of resources on both of those websites. And you can follow me I'm at Feed the Athlete on Instagram, and Injured Athletes Club on Instagram.
Gotcha. Well, awesome. Please go follow him. Please, if you haven't done so already, if I haven't talked this book up enough, please go get this. I've literally, like, it's nice. half yellow. It's half yellow right now. So if that's I can't give a better endorsement for a book than that. And so to all of you out there in podcast land, thanks for joining us today on the show. Go follow Carrie and her work. Go get Rebound. Follow us on the newsletter. That's link. There's a link in the show notes for that as well. And until next time, keep on keeping on. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of Trust the Process, the official podcast of Musician Unchained, the newest coaching program dedicated to helping musicians navigate and overcome injury. But before you go, I have a few quick ways you can stay connected and support our growing community. First of all, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me a text with the link below and share your thoughts, questions, or just say hi. You can also check the show out on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We also would love to see you in our Facebook support group, Trust the Process Podcast Injured Musician Support Group. If you found value in today's episode, consider making a donation to support our mission of empowering musicians worldwide. Every contribution helps us create more content and resources for you. So visit link number 2 below to support the mission. If you decide to donate, I'll send you my newest resource, the Injured Musician Toolkit, which is an ebook designed to give you tools to help you get through your injury. Subscribe to our newsletter to get exclusive insights, tips, sneak previews of episodes, and announcements straight to your inbox. Act now and I will send you a free gift. So sign up at www.musicianunchained.com/newsletter. And if you or someone you know would like to go deeper with me in the topics of injury and mindset, head over back to musicianunchained.com and check out the Let's Hang tab. As always, I want to thank Daniel Baldwin, my audio engineer, and my sister Dana Lovell for her help with the promotional materials. There is no podcast without them. But before I go, I want to tell you how much I deeply appreciate your time and support. You are not alone on this journey. There are musicians and educators out there who need this resource, and we need to get it to them. Together, we are breaking the chain of old habits and thought patterns that don't serve us anymore, and unchaining the potential within ourselves to face each challenge with strength and resilience. So, as I always say, keep on keeping on and keep trusting the process. Until next time.